Boy Scouts of America changing their name to be more inclusive. The New York governor is forced to apologize after saying that black kids don't know the word computer. And Katie Hobbs is once again proving why she is the worst governor in the United States of America. Welcome to Principled Politics, and today we're going to cut through the commentary. All right, well, welcome back to Principled Politics. It's been a little bit since I've recorded and since I've uploaded. Episode 3 has taken a while to come out, and so my apologies for that. A lot of life changes happening, a lot of new things coming about, and so a lot of exciting changes, a lot of things that I think are going to help the content that we're creating and help us cultivate a better environment to be able to bring content and news to you guys in a more efficient way. And so today's going to be a shorter episode. I'm only going to be covering 3 articles, but before I get into those 3 articles, I do want to touch on a few topics. We won't go into too much depth, but I do want to bring up and comment on some of the things happening with everything with Hamas, with Israel, everything happening in the university system. As many of you may know, if you don't know, then I'll just shortly summarize what's taken place over the past few weeks here. Many of the public universities across the country have had students, had organizers protest that are supported by Hamas. And we have these students who have decided that they're going to start an encampment on a public university and private university as well. And the problem with that is there's things that fall into place when it comes to protesting. If many of you don't know, when it comes to protesting, you can't just show up on any street corner. You can't just show up in any neighborhood at any time, anywhere, and protest and declare it lawful. There is time, place, manner, restrictions on protest. And so with these protests that have been taking place over this past little while, they haven't fallen into those categories in proper timing. So you've had students, the biggest one that I'll comment on is in Colombia, which is finally kind of wrapping itself up and coming to an end. But at Columbia University, we had hundreds of students deciding that basically they were protesting that the university itself would release itself or cut ties with the state of Israel so as to not give support to Israel. Now, keep in mind, Columbia is a university that has no direct ties to Israel as is. It has no funds or no money that is allocated or set aside to go towards Israel and towards anything happening in Israel with Hamas. But the Hamasniks decided that this was a great idea to protest so that the university could cut ties. And sure enough, if you look up the article and you read it yourself, the president of Columbia, who is a coward, decided that they were going to cave in, and they officially cut ties with the state of Israel, which means nothing. Of course, it's simply just a trope in which to satisfy the Hamasniks and get them to shut their mouths. So with all that said, so there's just a lot going on in the university systems. I'd encourage you to look it up. I'm sure many of you have been following it, staying informed. If I was online and if I was current, I would be reporting on it, but because I missed it and because it's something that is kind of coming to an end, I won't take too much time to talk on that subject. I just wanted to bring it up and mention it because it's just it just once again goes to show where the left is in their mindset, their worldview. And a lot of these students have the idea, they have the mindset that they are victims, that they are victimized, and they're in a constant state of revolution, right? This falls right in line with the theory of communism, with the theory of socialism, with Marxism, that there's always the oppressed and then the oppressors. And, when you look at the state of Israel, it's ironic because the state of Israel symbolizes a group who's been through oppression, who's been through exile and been through that. So by no means are Jews in any way elite or, in the sense oppressors. But when you look at these people who are LGBTQ, who are gay, who align themselves with Hamas, right? But in reality, if they were to go to Gaza, they would be thrown off of a rooftop, and killed for their beliefs because they don't align with Hamas as much as they think they do. And so in reality, what it comes down to is the fact that they see it as anti-whiteism. And this is something that Donald Trump commented on this past week, and making a comment in an interview that he said he was actually going to combat anti-whiteism. And that was definitely an issue that he saw and something that he wanted to do differently, which I think is a great thing. It's something that more people need to be aware of, is the fact that there is institutionally, if you want to talk about being institutional, oppression, there is something against white people as is. White people are being marginalized, and I know people will rage when they hear that, but they're being marginalized against due to the color of their skin. They're assumed to be oppressors, and that's what racism is. Racism is when you make an assumption, when you are making a judgment based on the color of someone's skin, when you're making a judgment based on how they look and their appearances. And so with all that being said, it just ties in, like I said, to the worldview of the Hamasniks. It ties into the worldview of what they believe and how they view Israel as a white nation. And so because of that, Israel is always going to be in the wrong when it comes to their war with Gaza, because Gaza is not predominantly white. Israel, although it's not predominantly white either, there are many Arabs in Israel, many Arab citizens. It goes back to the culture and the way in which they view Jews as a white culture. And so I wanted to comment on that and make a quick comment. I would encourage you guys all to dive into that yourselves, all to look into it. It's been very, very interesting to watch how different colleges react to this. Most colleges, public colleges, not surprisingly, have bent the knee to this group. It's BLM 2.0. They just bend the knee and let these people do what they want to do. But surprisingly, not so surprisingly, in Florida and many other places, these protesters have been shut down immediately, which is what needs to happen with these things. We don't need new laws. We don't need different things to happen. We just need the laws that we already have to be enforced unbiasedly. And that's what's happening, is that, there is a bias, because if, let's say there was a protest, an all-white protest, calling for the genocide of black people. Doesn't matter if it was the right time, right place, right manner. It doesn't matter, any of that. That protest would be shut down immediately. I guarantee you, on any college campus, any university whatsoever. So it's not about free speech. It's not about free expression. That's just a lie. That's a cover up for the reality and the truth. The truth is that these people genuinely are bending to this crowd because they want their votes, they want their approval, and they want them to be a part of their crowd. And so as we look at this, let's just continue to keep an eye on this, continue to push for the right narrative to be promoted, because this is not about free speech, right? This is about enforcing the law equally, right? If there's a group of Republicans, I would say the same thing, right? If there's a group of conservatives, of Christians, in any sense or form, doing something that is not in the proper time, not in the proper manner, not in falling in line with the proper protest, things that need to take place, and we're harassing people, we're keeping people from go to point A to point B, we're blocking roads. It doesn't matter who you are, what you believe, what you're saying. I could agree with your message, I could not agree with your message, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if you're not doing it in the right manner, then that is what will determine whether or not you're able to do those things. So yes, we are still a country of free speech. We are still a country that believes in that, but we need to advocate at the end of the day for proper protest, for peaceful protest, and for the ability for everyone to have free access to college, free access to public services, which is what these protests have been denying, right? They deny roads. They deny students access to school. They've been doing a lot of things to interfere with people's ability to access services and goods that they pay and invest into, like a public university or streets or roads. So we'll leave that at that. Moving on, the first article of the day, which we will read right now. I couldn't believe this when I read it, but I'm not surprised in any way, shape, or form. Boy Scouts of America changing name to more inclusive Scouting America after years of woes. Now, I'm just as lost as you are when it comes to this headline, so let's both dive in this together, and let's see what this is all about. So from the Associated Press, it says, Boy Scouts of America changing name to more inclusive Scouting America after years of woes. The Boy Scouts of America is changing its name for the first time in its 114-year history. The Texas-based organization is announcing its annual meeting in Florida on Tuesday that it will become Scouting America. The Boy Scouts of America is changing its name for the first time, blah, 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 blah. Same thing we've already read. It says that it's a significant shift as the organization emerges from bankruptcy, flowing a flood of sexual abuse claims, and seeks to focus on inclusion. The organization, steeped in tradition, has made seismic changes after decades of turmoil, from finally allowing gay youth to welcoming girls throughout its ranks. With an eye on increasing flagging membership numbers, the Irving, Texas-based organization announced the name change on Tuesday at its annual meeting in Florida. In the next 100 years, we want any youth in America to feel very, very welcome to come into our programs. Roger Crone, who took over last fall as president and chief executive officer, said in an interview before the announcement, the organization allowing gay youth in 2013 and ended a blanket ban on gay adult leaders in 2015 and 2017, it made a historic announcement that girls would be accepted as Cub Scouts as of 2018 and into the flagship Boy Scout program, renamed Scouts BSA in 2019. Over 6,000 girls have now achieved the vaunted Eagle Scout rank. There's some more that we'll read, but I just want to stop real quick and comment on this. I mean, from what I've always understood, I've never been a Boy Scout. I don't think I've known anybody who's been a Boy Scout, although most people who are Boy Scouts, well, not most people, but if someone was a Boy Scout and they're around me, they probably wouldn't tell me because I probably wouldn't look too fondly on it to begin with, because being a Boy Scout hasn't been cool in over half a century. It started off as something, cool and something to flex, but not anymore. Growing up, I've always understood Boy Scouts as being different. And so, when I look at this article and I read this, my understanding is that there's always been two sets of scouts, if you want to put it that way. There's been Boy Scouts, right? Very makes sense, right? Boy Scouts. I mean, it's in the name. The reason it was named Boy Scouts to begin with was because it was for boys. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. But on the other side, I'm sure many of you, my wife is one of them. Many of you people who love Girl Scout cookies know where to get them from. They're from Girl Scouts. That's why they're called Girl Scout cookies. And so I've always understood there's Boy Scouts and there's Girl Scouts. And, I think there's reasons for that, not just in the fact that boys and girls are different biologically. That's obviously that's first and foremost. There's also protection there. There's guidelines there. There's keeping boys and girls separate for obvious reasons when it comes to camping, when it comes to those activities. Keeping boys focused, allowing them to have that fixation on something that they take a lot of joy in, and not having the distraction of girls, because girls are a distraction for boys, and vice versa. So culturally, I'm not shocked. This is something that we should have expected, something that is very obvious to take place in the culture that we live in. The blurring of lines, right? This is what the left wants to do. They want to take your boys and feminize them. They want to take your girls and make them more masculine. They want to allow everything to be fluid. That's why they came up with the idea of gender fluidity. And so when we look at this happening, it's just creeping into another stronghold, right? As much as I hate to call it a stronghold, for a long part of American history, 114 years, as the article says, being a Boy Scout was a part of something cool. It was a part of something neat. It was a part of cultivating skills. It was a part of becoming more masculine and pouring into that and having men, masculine leaders, lead these boys and teach them good values, teach them how to work with their hands, teach them how to build fires, how to have basic survival skills. And that's what there was Eagle rank and all these things for. And so, there was this idea behind it that it was to cultivate a character of masculine characteristics. It was to cultivate something within boys, that curiosity, and to give them an outlet for the passion and the drive and the testosterone that they go through. And so with this, it says they're now allowing gay youth. They're allowing gay leaders now. They're allowing this to become compromised and allowing for just it to be whatever it is. It's just scouting of America. Just scouting of America. Right? There's no boys in it. There's no girls in it. It's just all mixed and matched. And that right there cuts to the heart of it, is that if you can't see a difference between boys and girls, if you can't see a difference between the way women operate and the way men operate and their passions and the things that drive them to do what they do, then you'll never understand why it was Boy Scouts of America. Right? It's very easy for me to understand, oh yeah, like Boy Scouts, like I understand the appeal there. Like, when I was younger, I didn't know that Boy Scouts was necessarily a thing. But if someone had described it to me, the way in which it is described, as camping, hunting, and doing all these amazing, cool activities, or learning about those activities, not necessarily doing all those things, but learning about them, I 100% as a young boy would have loved to do that, because that's something that is unique to boys, unique to men, is that desire to explore, that desire, that drive to hunt, to have that, primitive instinct that only boys have. And so I think it just completely goes in the face of what Boy Scouts are for. It completely just blows up the meaning of it. And so, as me and my wife continue to prepare for potentially raising boys, potentially raising girls, and the future of parenthood, as we're newlywed and we're walking into that season, this is something we've seriously examined, something we've seriously looked at and understood, that there is a difference between boys and girls. There is a difference in interest. And there's nothing wrong with pointing your son or your daughter back towards those interests, pointing them back towards masculine things and cultivating that within them. And that's what Boy Scouts was for a lot of boys and a lot of young men during the season. Is it was a way in which to, in a healthy environment, in a safe environment, guided by adults and by men, it was a way in which to point them back towards their roots, point them back towards more masculine traits. And it's just such a shame to see that all go down the drain, to see that just be wasted. And so, when we look at this, it is a shame. It is something that we should mourn as a culture, the fact that Boy Scouts probably will never be the same. It's probably something that we can kiss goodbye to in the traditional sense of what it used to be. And it's something that we will never get to enjoy in its full capacity for our sons and our daughters in the way in which that it was meant to be by its founders. And so it is a shame. It's something that I hate to see, and something that I hope maybe one day we're able to bring it back to what it used to be, and we're able to distinguish between boys, distinguish between girls, and we're able to have events for girls, events for boys. This isn't just Boy Scouts. It's with sports. It's with everything. It's sad because all it does is it just hurts our children. It hurts kids. It continues to put them in a position of being compromised in their nature, in who God has made them to be as boys and as girls. And it just creates confusion. That's why you have polygamy. That's why you have transgenderism. That's why you have LGBTQ and all these different things that take place because of the blurred lines. So we'll leave that at that. Moving on to our next article for the day. I'll go ahead and read this article here. New York governor is forced to apologize for saying that black kids in the Bronx don't know the word computer. Now, when I first read this, I wasn't quite sure what was going on here. But as we'll read, very interesting. So from The Independent, The New York governor forced to apologize for saying black kids in the Bronx don't know the word computer. New York Governor Kathy Hochul has been forced to walk back her comments after she claimed that black children in the Bronx don't know the word computer. Speaking at Milken Institute Global Conference in California on Monday about her state's artificial intelligence, Ms. Hochul claimed, "We have young black kids growing up in the Bronx who don't even know what the word computer is, and I want the world opened up to all of them." After facing after facing backlashes over her remarks, the governor apologized and said that she misspoke. "I misspoke and I regret it," Ms. Hochul told the New York Post. "Of course, black children in the Bronx know what computers are. The problem is they too often lack access to the technology needed to get on track to high-paying jobs in the emerging industries like AI." New York State Assembly members from the Bronx branded her comments as misinformed and disheartening. Amanda Sepno, an assembly member of the 84th District, including the Bronx, called Ms. Hochul's comments harmful, deeply misinformed, and genuinely appalling. She wrote, "I would invite Governor Hochul to visit us in the Bronx to experience firsthand the intelligence, resilience, and the joy that radiate from Bronx children and residents each day. The underlying perception conveyed about black and brown children from the Bronx is not only disheartening, but also concerning." He wrote, they're not only capable, but deserving of every opportunity that their counterparts are offered." Corrine Reyes, who also represents an area in the Bronx, similarly said that she was deeply disturbed by Ms. Hochul's remarks and that the underlying perception that she has of the black and brown children from the Bronx. She added, "Our children are bright, brilliant, extremely capable, and more than deserving of any opportunities that are extended to other kids. Do better," Ms. Reyes said. And so, transitioning from Boy Scouts to this next article, I can't tell you how many times I've seen this, how many times we've heard this. I think Miss Hochul here has been just caught in, she's not the only one who thinks this. Now, I'm going to go on a limb here. Not really on a limb, but I'm going to say something here that I know everybody knows is true. It's just something that you don't hear very often, right? People want to accuse the conservative side, the right, of being the racist side, of being the side that promotes racism, promulgates racism, and it looks down on black people, thinks that they're lost cause, or thinks that they're unintelligent and criminals and all these things, right? But time and time again, although the media doesn't hone in on it, the media doesn't focus on it nearly as much as they should, when we see this happening, we see a perfect example of a leftist, a liberal, who has this worldview and this idea of black people that is not real. This is very similar to when, you know, many college students at UC Berkeley, many college students in California were asked a question in a survey, and I watched it. I'd encourage you guys to search it up. You know, they're surveying the college campus, and they're asking these students if they believe that voter identification or requiring voter IDs is inherently racist. Now, each and every one of them answers, and they say, "Oh, of course it's racist, of course." And then the survey asks, "Well, why is it racist?" Probing the question, and their answer is that black people may not have access to internet to know where their nearest DMV is, or black people don't know where the DMV is. Black people don't even have driver's license. Black people don't drive. Black people can't afford cars. Black people don't know this. And it was secondhand embarrassment on my part to watch these students who are hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and who are so uninformed about the world, so uninformed about people. Everything they do is in a bubble. It's in a vacuum. And so they have no clue what the outside world is actually like. They've been fed this bag of lies about black people being oppressed, black people, um, you know, being like these hopeless damsels in distress who have no agency. And it's so funny because they really do, although they self deprivate themselves by saying, "Oh, we're white," if they are white, like white leftists will say, "Oh, we're so sorry for everything we've done," and we've done so wrong, poorly by your people, and all these things. Even in that, they still cultivate this white savior complex. And I'm very hesitant to say that, but even if they're not white, I mean, it's just a savior complex. Like, it's this idea that there are these black people who need to be saved by them because they're being oppressed by a system. And that in and of itself is racist. This idea that black people are dumb, that they don't have self agency, that they don't have the ability to get a voter ID or a driver's license or any sort of identification. And in that same video, the video that I'm mentioning and talking about right now, uh, the surveyist went down into a predominantly black African American neighborhood, and he surveyed the neighborhood, and he asked 16-year-olds, he asked 17-year-olds, he asked old people, all age groups of this black demographic, if they knew where the DMV was, if they had a license, and if they had any issue identifying themselves for voting. And to all three of those questions, they had licenses. They knew where the DMV was. They didn't even need a GPS. They knew it back of their head. They said, oh, yeah, it's over there on 16th Street, and boom. And each and every one of them said, yeah, that makes sense. Why, of course we want to identify ourselves. We have no problem identifying ourselves. They just want to verify that we are who we say we are when we're voting. And so they're not living in reality. They're living in a false sense of reality. They're living in a worldview that they've cultivated. And I heard this week. I forget where it was, so I don't want to steal this from someone. So I'm crediting someone out there. I'm sure you guys know where it came from. But basically, the way it goes is that someone who has a realistic view of the world, right, and someone who holds an intellectual worldview, they're, let's compare them to a map maker. They're making a map. They have this idea of what the landscape looks like, and they hop in a ship and they take voyage to go to the place in which they mapped beforehand. And the problem with the scholar, the person who's been brainwashed by the institution, when they reach the land and they realize that where they drew mountains, there's actually a meadow. So there's not a mountain, there's a meadow. Instead of saying, oh, I was wrong, there's actually a meadow here, I predicted a mountain. Instead of saying that, they assume there's something wrong with the meadow. Why is the meadow not a mountain? Because they are always right. Their mapping wasn't wrong. Their prediction wasn't wrong. It's the land that is wrong. They're right over reality. And so that ties directly into this, what we see from Kathy Hochul. And, she says she misspoke. I don't understand what she was trying to say. If she misspoke, I think she was very clear in her statement. I'll read it one more time for you guys so that you guys can hear it again. She said, we have young black kids growing up in the Bronx who don't even know what the word computer is. I want the world to be open up to all of them. I don't know how that's misspeaking. It's a very clear statement. It's a very straightforward statement. And I believe that she said exactly what she meant to say. Nothing else to it. She got caught in her own words. And so I'll wrap this up in this section up, and we'll move on to the final section of the day, where we get to the local section where I'll cover some Arizona news. But with this last comment, when we're trying to reach out to the black demographic, we're trying to reach out to minorities and other people as conservatives, as people who are trying to reach them, I think that this is the best argument that can be made. This is by far just evidence, time and time again, that the left truly is the racist side in this party. As a conservative, my view of the minority community, the black community, my own community, Mexican communities, other communities that identify as minorities, my view of it is that they don't need systems, they don't need institutions to give them an advantage or to give them something to have a pedestal forward. I didn't need that. I didn't get that. My family didn't get that. We just worked hard, we proved ourselves, and we just showed ourselves to have the worth and value through our merit. A meritorious society is a society that can progress forward. Morgan Freeman said it best. You want to deal with racism? Don't talk about it. Move on, move forward. Base it on the merits, base it on the value that a person brings to the table, regardless of the color of their skin. And so, with that being said, my message to all of you is Black kids do know what computers are. Majority of them, maybe not the ones in Africa who maybe are tribal and don't have any access to technology, but the ones in the Bronx definitely know what a word computer is. And as conservatives, it's just Ben Shapiro says the best. He says that the first team, basically meaning left or right, the first team to reach sanity, right? The first side to reach sanity will win. And I hope and pray that we are able to see their mistakes, to step back and continue to let them trip upon themselves. Let's not get in the way of that. Let's let the left continue to stumble on their own shoelaces, and let's move forward and let's capitalize on these opportunities to reach people who are looked down upon by the left and seen as victims and as weaklings. I don't see them as that, and I know that if as conservatives we can capitalize on that, we can see a lot of victories in our future. So moving on to our last headline. I'll see you there. All right, last article of the day, coming out of Arizona, where I'm located. And so many of you know that I'm very passionate about this state. I care about it a lot. It is definitely a swing state in the 2024 election. And so, my hope would be that this would be a state in where we can make some change and cause change for the better. And so I see a lot of hope here. As we look at this article, this segment, we're going to be focusing on our favorite, my favorite governor, Katie Hobbs, the best governor in the U.S. of A. So we're going to be looking here at this one. This one's a little older. It actually happened April 16th, so a little over 2 weeks now. I would say over 3 weeks now ago that this happened. Many of you may not have heard about this, but it may have flown under your radar. However, I want to bring it up because it's very important, something that happened and something that I want to cover as we look at this. So, Governor Hobbs vetoes 10 Commandments bill. GOP says that she's abandoning God. So the Arizona GOP party says that she's abandoning God. The bill would have allowed teachers to read or post copies of the 10 Commandments in school buildings. Now, from the outset, obviously, we should have known this would have never passed any legislation with a liberal governor and a liberal mayor, a liberal everything in the state of Arizona. But the GOP did force Katie Hobbs to show her cards in this sense, to show where she stands on the 10 Commandments. So we'll read a little bit of this article, and I actually have a news kind of segment that I'll play, and then we'll give some final thoughts as we close out this episode. Governor Katie Hobbs has vetoed a bill that would have allowed Arizona teachers to read or post copies of the 10 Commandments in any building. The Democrat governor said Senate Bill 1151 was unnecessary, and she had some serious concerns about the legislation's constitutionality. The president... Oh, hold on. I want to read that sentence to you one more time, okay? Because I think it's hysterical. The Democratic governor said Senate Bill 1151 was unnecessary, and she had some serious concerns about the legislation's constitutionality. And this is why, Katie Hobbs is the best governor in the United States, in my opinion, is because she's so true to the values of the Constitution. She lives, eats, and breathes the U.S. Constitution. That is her manna from on high. Obviously, we know that that's a lie. We know that she's trying to pull a quick one over our heads. This is something that the left does, and it's just infuriating for anyone who pays attention long enough, is that in the very same breath, they can say that the Constitution was founded by racist bigots of the American founders. And in the very next breath, whenever they're trying to stop something or they're trying to prevent something from taking place that doesn't align, they then in turn use the Constitution as a weapon for their means. This is not what elected officials are meant to do. Elected officials are meant to represent us and to uphold the Constitution of the United States without bias, right? But obviously we live in a broken and fallen world, and that's why Hamilton and Madison predicted this. They knew that this would take place. Unless we're governed by angels, men would not need government, right? Unless men were angels, they would not need government. And if government officials were angels, we would not need checks and balances. And so in this, she leans back, on her crutch, which is the constitutionality of having the Ten Commandments displayed, which is something the founding fathers would have never, ever in a million years even thought was a possibility. Saying that having the Ten Commandments in a school was unconstitutional. Moving on, the presence of the Ten Commandments in public places has been contested as a legal issue for decades in the U.S. In 1980, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled a Kentucky law requiring the display of the Ten Commandments in every school classroom was unconstitutional and violated the First Amendment. The First Amendment's separation of church and state. Now let me just stop for a second and explain to people who haven't read the Constitution that is actually not in the Constitution. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say separation of church and state. Now, there shall not be a church state. There shall not be a church that is ran by the state. But in nowhere does it say that the church and the state can't come together and work together. Anyways, in 2005, the High Court reviewed two similar cases involving the display of the Ten Commandments on government property. The justices determined the presence of the commandments in the Kentucky courthouse was unconstitutional, but in the other case ruled that it was constitutional for Texas to display the commandments at the state capitol building. Arizona Republican lawmakers emphasized that the legislation would not have required schools to teach the biblical principles, but rather offer the option to include the Ten Commandments in the classroom. Arizona state law already permits teachers to display the motto, "In God We Trust," and the state motto, which translates to "God enriches." State law additionally instructs a district's governing board to exclude from schools all books, papers, and audiovisual materials of a partisan or denominational character. Senate Bill 1151 passed the Republican-controlled Arizona legislature along party lines and with little support from the Democrats. In a statement from the Arizona Senate Republicans, the caucus accused Hobbs of abandoning God and contributing to the cultural degradation within Arizona by vetoing the bill. Now let's take a look here at this video.
Another story we're following that will be taking a hard look at what's going on there at the Capitol. The governor, Katie Hobbs, vetoing a couple of GOP-backed education bills. One would have allowed the Ten Commandments to be displayed and even read in classrooms. Critics say it imposes a religion upon students. Supporters say they're important values to teach to kids. The second would have required candidates for Arizona school boards to run with party designations. Critics of that one said it unnecessarily would politicize education. Supporters, however, said it would add transparency for voters who might like to know whether someone leans more Republican or Democrat if they're in fact going to vote them onto a school board.
Okay, well, there you have it. That is the video, and the comment that he made, obviously he's not arguing that, but the comment that was made by the left and the liberals saying that this was an imposition of religion onto the children. That's just a load of crap. That is just, they're so full of it. I mean, they literally display LGBTQ, BLM, all type of Marxist, weird, Buddha, whatever, all over classrooms. And you know for a fact they would never, ever, ever, ever go to any of those teachers and say, hey, you're forcing that on the children. That's unconstitutional. We're just going to have to ask you to step away from that. We're going to have to ask you to take those down for the sake of the children. Never, ever, ever, ever would they ever do that. And we see this time and time again. The left caters to their religion, right? It may not be a formal religion where there's God, because the God is self in their worldview, but they have a state religion and a religion that they push in the classroom, a worldview that they push in the classroom to the children, and the children have no choice but to receive it. And in this bill, it didn't even say that it was required. It didn't say how, in the Kentucky bill where they said, hey, you have to. It was opening up the freedom and the choice for teachers to display it and to read it. Not to teach it and say, you have to believe this, but to read it and to teach it to their kids and to display that and to show the kids, hey, this is the Ten Commandments. This is the Ten Commandments that everybody should follow. Then again, they don't believe in the Ten Commandments. The left does. The left doesn't believe in the Ten Commandments. They don't believe in that. And any sign of God, any sign of religion just brings out the demonic spirits within them that just rage against Christianity, that rage against religion. And, the founders said it best, without formed religion, without organized religion, the culture is bound for moral decay. The culture is destined to collapse. And so if our students can't even have the ability to learn about it, to understand that, oh, yeah, religion is a thing. Religion is real. Religion is this. There is a way in which to teach it without imposing it. But the left refuses to even give us the opportunity to allow the kids to think freely and to explore and to know all religions and ideas for themselves. Because they're so hell-bent on control. They're so hell-bent on controlling every single aspect of these kids' lives to formulate them, to indoctrinate them, to become left-wing radicals and left-wing activists and everything and such. And that is what leads to what we see tying it all back to how I started the episode, that's what leads to, Columbia University students burning American flags. It leads to them calling for jihad, calling for the downfall of America. We need to have a set of shared values. And if as Americans, we cannot even agree, even not even agreeing on the origin of the Ten Commandments, not even agreeing on, where the Ten Commandments came from, what it symbolizes, whether or not even if God is real or not. If as Americans, we used to have a shared commitment to 10 commandments as a set of moral boundaries and a set of moral laws that we can follow as a society. But without even displaying them, without even being able to teach them, we have lost the moral fabric that ties our culture together, that keeps us together as a society. And with the loss of that comes the decay of the culture, comes the decay of our moral values, and leads to deprivation, leads to polygamy, leads to infidelity, leads to divorce rates, child fatherlessness, abortion. All these things are a byproduct of a loss of, common mutual moral standing and moral grounds that comes from a Christian background or Judeo-Christian worldview. And so as we look at this, it's just despicable what Katie Hobbs has done. It's despicable how she's handled herself as governor. She's the worst governor. She has proven once again why she is the worst governor in the United States. And, I guess I say that in the sense that, some may say that, well, I guess you could make the argument. Some would say that Gavin Newsom is the worst governor in the United States. But, in big part, I think that, I'm not surprised that Gavin Newsom governs the way he governs. Gavin Newsom actually does a great job representing the people that he governs. Everything he does and says, they agree with, they cheer and they love. The majority of them do. That's what California has turned into. But Arizona, on the other hand, I have a deep-rooted belief, living here for the past 20-some years, I have a deep-rooted belief that there is a deep-rooted conservative base here. There is a grassroots base of conservatives and of people who want to live a normal life in Arizona, and it's really 50-50. It's really on the fence. And so you have this governor who does things and who is not representing her people fairly and who is just catering to the partisan side of who she is and catering to just the left-wing base. And so I genuinely hope and pray that as time continues on, as we as conservatives continue the grassroots movement to push forward what we believe in and to evangelize and to promulgate moral values and to push for sanity and to let the left continue to trip upon themselves. I believe that this will bring forth the change that we seek. This will bring forth change. This will bring forth a sense of freshness, a sense of moral clarity to the state and to hopefully the rest of the country. And I hope that, I know it's a long shot. I mean, but you look at a place like Florida, a place that used to be blue and has turned bright red through the change of a movement. And so I hope that, as Katie Hobbs continues to stub her own toe and continues to ruin all that she does and all that she touches, my hope is that us as conservatives can see the value in it, cannot lose hope, push forward in a grassroots movement, and fight back against what we see here. And we can bring about change in Arizona and hopefully flip this state back to its rightful place as a red and conservative state. Well, thank you for watching and or listening. That'll do it for today's episode. You can find us at principled-politics.com. And don't forget to stay principled.